Hello, I am delighted to be at the Women in Construction World Series, and I'm going to talk to you today about the science and psychology of well-being and high performance. My name is Deborah Hume, and I'm the founder of Minerva Engagement. We're a consultancy that supports people and business in times of change, and we have a particular focus on well-being and the relationship between well-being and high performance. So today, I want to talk through our understanding of the new normal, what the implications of that may be for well-being and performance, the role of leadership, and how we can create the conditions to not just survive, but also thrive as we go through this particular period in time. We all know that we're in a very changing world, that it's quite volatile and quite chaotic, and we've all got used to or learned how to better manage changing times. However, I think the pandemic has taken us into a completely new space. It is, I say it is. I don't think we really know what the new normal is actually going to look like, but I do know that we're all feeling slightly off balance. And I think that's because we're finding it difficult to cope with everything that is changing all at once. It's not just change in our work life in the way that we're used to, but it's also impacting our family life, our friendship life, and our social life. And I think at this particular moment in time, we do need to be really vigilant and make sure that we are very focused on looking after ourselves and our well-being, more so than we have perhaps in the past. And again, I know that as individuals and also across our organizations, we've spent a lot of time over the past few years thinking about well-being and mental health. We've seen the impact when well-being and mental health is adversely affected. We understand the implications, not just for us as humans, but also for the performance within our organizations. But I think now we're in a completely different era. And I liken it to this surge capacity that Anne Maston talks about, in that when we're faced with short-term trauma or short-term adversity, such as natural disasters, we do have the mental and the physical capability to work ourselves through it. We can step up, if you like, and put into place certain resources that enable us to get to the other side of it. The challenge that we've got with this pandemic is that it's going on for a long period of time. And whilst we are good at those short bursts, we're not good at the continual long-term stress that we're currently facing that actually leads us into chronic stress. And I think Anne refers to us at the moment as being in a permanent state of low trauma. And that's not good. It's not good for who we are, and it's not good for how we perform, because when we're in that chronic stress, it has a direct impact on our behavior and on our physiology. So how does it impact? Well, it takes our thinking resources offline. We know that we have very precious resources that sit at the front part of our brain, just behind the forehead. They are the resources that allow us to strategize, set goals, to do all of the work, if you like, that we need to do as our knowledge workers selves. We also know that those resources use a lot of energy. And actually, when we're under stress, they run down very, very quickly, just as they run down very, very quickly when we're hungry or we're tired. So at this moment in time, when we're suffering consistent chronic stress brought on by all of the massive change that we're all trying to deal with in every aspect of our lives, our thinking resources are under a lot of strain. The other impact that it has is on our emotional self. Again, when we're feeling very stressed, we do feel agitated, we do feel tense, we find it difficult to sleep. So as our thinking self starts to go offline, our emotional self, the negative aspects of our emotional self, gets much more powerful, particularly so when we are cut off from those around us. One of the things that we need as human beings is social connection, good social connection. It's fundamental to who we are, and it makes us feel happy, and it allows us to offset, if you like, some of that negativity that comes from the stress. Unfortunately, at the moment, as we know, it's difficult to maintain that social connection. Most of it seems to be through digital media, which has its place, but doesn't replace the face-to-face connection that we're used to. So again, if we haven't got the tools, if we haven't developed the skills to build our internal resilience, it is difficult to manage through long-term chronic stress. I think the other activity that we need to be aware of is our nervous self. Most of our nervous self happens below our consciousness, but it has a huge impact on what we do and how we project out into the world. So when our nervous system senses threat or feels under stress, it sets off a whole cascade of activity within us designed to protect us, things that we wouldn't necessarily notice. So, for example, it will switch off our middle ear so that we can hear the screeches or the growls of predators more clearly because we don't hear those midtones as well. It flattens our facial features. It alters our voice tone, all designed to prepare us for threat and keep us more safe. But also it reflects out to those around us. So even though, again, for us it's unconscious, and also perceptions for them might be unconscious, the nervous systems of all of us are picking up these signals which alter what we do, how well we collaborate, and how well we mix. So I think, the new normal, yes, there's going to be lots of things for us to get used to, and it's going to alter the way we work. But I think it is putting a huge strain on who we are as individuals. And that then reverberates through our sense of wellness and ultimately through how well we perform within our organizations, which is why we need to wrap some support systems around ourselves and build our skills and capabilities to deal with the new world that we're now in. Made doubly difficult, by the way, by the fact that we operate to this 5-to-1 ratio of threat to reward. And what I mean by that is that our brains are designed to keep us safe. That's what they're there to do. My brain, every day, every second of every day, is scanning the environment to make sure that it can keep me safe, to notice threats, to get me out of the way of those threats and get me back to safety. And because of that, because we've evolved that way, because if we didn't evolve that way, we wouldn't be here today, we have a very sensitive antennae to threat. So we notice threats 5 times more often than we notice things that are going to support us or help us or reward us. So when we are in this, if you like, this chronic stress state, and we're being impacted by lots of different things from many different directions, our sensitivity to threat is very, very high, which means that we're constantly setting off this cascade of activity in our nervous system, which means that our thinking self is finding it very difficult to function in a really productive way, which means that our emotional self, particularly our highly anxious emotional self, is getting more powerful and taking over who we are and how we operate, which will ultimately have an impact not just on our wellness, but all the relationships we build with those around us, whether they be in the office or whether they be in the family or the friendship group. So how does this work? Well, it all comes back to this sense of psychological safety. And when we talk about psychological safety, it means, how safe do I feel in my environment? How safe do I feel to show up? When we're talking about it from an organizational point of view, it's how safe do I feel to give my point of view? Do I feel that those around me are going to listen to me and respect me? Or do I feel that they're going to humiliate me or laugh at me? And psychological safety then impacts whatever we do. So it will impact our level of engagement. It will ultimately impact our performance. And it's linked to this sense of threat and reward. So if I'm not feeling safe, if I don't feel comfortable, if I don't feel that I'm protected, my brain will sense this threat, and it again will alter how I view the world and what I do. So when I'm in a very high threat state, which you could argue most of us are at the moment, when I'm in this very high threat state, it will impact my memory. because when I'm threatened, I'm releasing cortisol. Cortisol impacts the hippocampus. The hippocampus is responsible for laying short-term memory down to long-term memory. So if it is negatively impacted, it can't really do that. It actually has lots of other functions, but one of them is the short-term to long-term memory. Luckily, actually, it's the one area of the brain that can grow new neurons. So when the stress and the cortisol releases, it should regenerate. But we know from studies that have been done with senior executives that when they're operating under very high stress for long periods of time, their memory function is severely compromised. It also narrows our vision when we are feeling under threat, and you'll know this from yourselves and from your own experiences. When we're not feeling safe, we focus only on what we've got to do. We just want to get that done in the best way that we possibly can so that we can be safe, get home, and remain comfortable. So we're not really interested in popping our hand up to give our views or express our ideas, because that's a little bit dangerous, because it might not be well received. So we just put our heads in our laptop and focus on what we've got to do. So that then has an impact on collaboration. It has an impact on innovation. And consequently, the fear that we're feeling then starts to influence not just our mental health, but also our physical health. I think the other point to be aware of is that energy is hugely contagious. Human energy is, as Keith Grint said, it moves around teams like electricity through wires. So if we're feeling really negative and if we're feeling really unsafe, it will be caught. That energy, that negative energy will be caught by those around us, and it goes across organizations, team by team. Alternatively, if we're in an environment that is high in psychological safety, so I am feeling safe, I am feeling comfortable, I don't think that, I'm going to be attacked or anything bad is going to happen to me, because that's the way the brain thinks, because we're still running all of our modern day challenges through old architecture. So the brain literally is in survival, will I live or will I die mode, and translates everything in that way. If we're feeling that, yes, I'm okay and I'm going to survive and I'm quite comfortable, that's when we're more creative. It's when we are quite happy to put our hand up. We want to collaborate. Our resilience is high. It's exactly what we want in our teams and our organizations if we're going to build a sustainable business. And the reason it's so important is because it's an absolute human biological need, this sense of psychological safety. It goes right back to when we were first evolving, if you like, from the caves. Essentially, if we weren't safe within our group, if we didn't feel that our group was going to look after us, if we did something that got us excluded, then we were thrown out of the cave and we would either die from cold or from hunger or from a predator. Even today, actually, when we are first born, if we don't have a good caregiver who's going to look after us and keep us safe, we will still die. As a consequence, this wiring of social connection, being socially accepted, being able to be one of the team, has become very strong and very deep within our brain. And this is being underpinned by a lot of research that is now coming through from Google and also Gallup. Google in 2012 ran the Project Aristotle. The purpose of that was to identify the key attributes that make a high-performing team. They did identify those attributes. There was dependability, there was structure and clarity, meaning and impact. But they couldn't find the one thing that actually linked all the high-performing teams together until they analysed the research by Amy Edmondson, who was a professor from Harvard University, undertaking large studies around psychological safety across many different industry sectors. And if you want to read about her work, actually, she's written a fabulous book called The Fearless Organization. When they applied Amy's research to what they were doing, Google identified psychological safety as being the number one thing that needed to be in place if a team was going to be high performing. And their research encompassed 180 teams and 37,000 employees. So it was considerable in terms of what they were doing. There's also been research by Gallup. I think they undertook some research in 2015 and also in 2017, which supported the results from Google. In addition, there are now new standards that are being generated. I know that the ISO is currently developing their standard 45003, which has a specific focus on psychological safety and is going to be included into the existing occupational health and safety ISO standard 45001. And this new psychological safety aspect is going to be released for 2021. When it comes to psychological safety, and this again came out of some of the research from Gallup, is that it's the leadership behavior that influences psychological safety to a large extent. So how we are as leaders, the behavior, the mindset that we bring to play, how we manage our teams, what we set up as team has a huge influence on the levels of psychological safety that I feel when I'm within that team. And this is because there is a difference between psychological safety and trust. So psychological safety is about whether I believe others are going to give me the benefit of the doubt. What I mean by that is, do I feel safe enough to put my ideas on the table? Do I feel comfortable putting my hand up with a question? Or do I feel that actually I'll be laughed at or I'll be humiliated? Do I feel that actually by doing that, I'm going to put myself into a situation where I'm going to feel threatened? If I feel threatened, psychological safety will be low and I won't put my hand up. Whereas if I feel that the team are going to support me, take an interest in my ideas, even if they don't take them forward, but at least respect them, then I will feel safe enough to put my hand up. So psychological safety is a property of the team and it comes out of trust and respect. Whereas trust itself is about me giving others the benefit of the doubt. Do I feel that the person next to me is going to do what they say they're going to do? Do I feel that the organization is going to be there for me in the way that the organization says it's going to be there for me? Trust exists in my mind, and it's about whether I feel that I can give others the benefit of the doubt. So there's a difference between the two things, which is why the leadership element is so important when we're trying to put in play a high psychological safety culture. So in order to create the conditions to thrive, there are things that we can do at an organizational level as well as at a leadership or personal level. At an organizational level, we can focus on purpose. Meaning is really important. We all need to know what our purpose is, whether it be at an individual level, a team, or an organizational level. And we may need to revisit that when we get through the other side of the pandemic, because so much will have changed. So why am I here? What is my purpose? Making it meaningful, really important, and something that I know from an organizational point of view we've been focused on for some time. I think we also need to focus attention on what we need to do to improve psychological safety and to improve how we feel around it. And one of the things that we can do is to measure it. And there are tools out there. I know Amy Edmondson has a tool with her practice. We use Conductor within our practice that gives a really deep view across a whole organization, team by team, in terms of levels of psychological safety. And it's fascinating to get those results and track back to wellness and also to business KPI criteria. We need to be able to invest in leadership. We all have well-developed IQ. We have technical skills and the training in place to support the development of those technical skills. I think the area where we perhaps need to focus a bit more attention is around our social intelligence, our emotional intelligence, our attentional intelligence, and how we develop those intelligences and develop the practices, the tools, and the skills required to improve our resilience. As we do that, we then improve the collective intelligence of the entire team or the entire organization. And of course, none of this is able to be put into play without robust structure and process. We can't have one without the other. When we talk about well-being and when we talk about the importance of psychological safety and moving people away from threat, yes, that is absolutely key, but that doesn't lead to high performance in itself. High performance is a combination of the psychological safety aspect, the wellness aspect, and having the structure, the governance, the process, the procedures in place that enable high performance to really flourish and support that energy flow. So when we're talking about wellness and psychological safety, it's not an either or. For really high performance, we really need both. So I think these things are really quite key if we're going to be able to thrive. And I think when it comes to what we need to do as a leader, and when I say leader, this applies as much to the leadership title as it does to me as an individual, being able to be a leader, whether it be with my family, friends, or within my work environment. We do need to build our knowledge. We need to understand more about how the brain works and the physiology of us as humans and what enables us to really thrive and what gets in the way. And we've got so much knowledge out there now. We've learned more about the brain and the brain-body interaction in the last 20 years than we have in the last 3,000. And we understand now how to communicate it and talk about it. We need to learn how to regulate our emotion, particularly now, what strategies we can put in place, the importance of labeling, the importance of gratitude training, the importance of mindfulness, the importance of being able to reappraise. There's so much out there now that we can use to help guide us through quite challenging times, that the more we can learn and the more we can practice, the better we'll be. And I think reflective practice, this is really important. This is about noticing the thoughts that we're having, reflecting on what's going on in our body, reflecting on how well we did or didn't do something, and being able to learn from that. And it's something that we've kind of lost our way with in the busyness of modern life. But these are all skills that are going to help us cope with this new world that we're talking about. And essentially, it's all about strengthening the resilience bank that we have to be able to manage ourselves through quite challenging times. Just in summary, and to pull it all together, are we in a new normal? I think so, but what that new normal is, I have no idea. But it does mean that we need to be able to develop our skills and our capabilities to be able to manage ourselves through it, because otherwise our wellness will be compromised. And when our wellness is compromised, our performance will be compromised. If we cannot manage that sense of threat, and if we get to a point where our psychological safety is feeling very, very compromised, then it will impact everything that we do. As leaders, we can directly influence the sense of safety that our teams feel, and we can put things in play, not just in terms of process, but also in terms of our language, our mindset, our behavior, and the energy that we bring that can have a dramatic influence on those around us. We can do that at an individual level, and we can also collectively at an organizational level put things in play that will help us and support us as we do that. So yes, we do have a responsibility to strengthen the resilience bank for ourselves and for those we lead. This pandemic, as articulated by Anne Marston, is leading us into a perpetual state of low trauma. That's not good. That leads us into chronic stress. Our systems are not designed to work well or perform well under chronic stress. We need to be able to find ways to reduce that level of stress, reduce that level of threat. And as we do that, we will improve our sense of wellness, and we will then be able to maintain and keep walking towards high performance at both an individual level, a team level, and an organizational level. That's it from me in terms of this talk. I shall look forward very much to answering any questions that you may have.